probably fitting to have the Neanderthalic orthopedic surgeon talk about the very basis of organic innovation, because if we are going to talk about scaling, we need to start somewhere. The longest journey is indeed begun with a single step. And for this sophisticated audience, we certainly don't need to define innovation, putting ideas to work, reducing transcendent thought to practice. But as you see, I usually put the qualifier mission-driven. And I really loved what John said earlier about missionaries and mercenaries, because essentially mission-driven innovation in which we all engage is essentially that which just improves and extends human life. And that's really what we're all about here. When I'm asked as the Chief Innovation Officer of one of the largest hospital systems in the world, when did innovation start at Cleveland Clinic, I usually say 1921. Our founding, our model of care was innovative. Through those years, we contributed some of the advances in technique and technology that define the modern practice of healthcare. First blood transfusion, kidney dialysis, practically anything you can think about in the heart. But it was in the mid-90s when I was trying to advance my own patent portfolio, had 2 little girls to raise with my wife, Cece, was trying to build a practice, and I honestly didn't have the resources to advance it. It was then I went into our CEO, a man named Fred Loop, and said, how do we handle this at this institution? The answer was probably anticipated by most of you, how the heck do you want to handle it? And it was then that it really came to us that uniting the individual with the institution over their intellectual property portfolio in an academic not-for-profit setting actually made a lot of sense. It wasn't the antithesis of the academic mission, it was an enabler of the academic mission. It allowed us then to build the process and practice innovation as a discipline. We call it, like many do, the virtuous cycle. We have brilliant clinicians and breakthrough discovery scientists at the bench that are seeing the unmet need. They solve it in a rudimentary manner. It was up to us then to build the infrastructure, the architecture, to take it through those many gestational stages so it could get back in their hands. You know, legal, engineering, prototyping, regulatory, transactional. So we internalized those processes and thus started really a journey now of 2 decades that has yielded 70-plus spin-out companies, has returned $100 million to our on-campus inventors, controlling nearly 1,100 or 1,200 patents and managing 700 royalty-bearing licenses. Essentially, I know I wasn't the only one engaged in this type of ideation. So we had a plethora of organic ideas. The key then was to find the filters. How could we pick the winners, deploy our scarce resources in a way that was most advantageous, especially because we all know how peripatetic innovation is. It's nonlinear, it's long to success, it certainly is fraught with failure. All of us engaged in it know that. And for an organization like ours, even as big as ours, those are really significant challenges. Ones that need an on-campus champion and complete buy-in from the C-suite if you're going to get to the place where some of them emerge and can really be game-changing technologies as well as those that can help our fellow man. We dealt with a whole different spectrum of funding. I think that people really kind of forget sometimes about what true seed funding or pre-economic or sub-commercial funding really means. We have a barrel full of things for their proof of concept that need $25,000 to $50,000. Probably a bucket full that need $100,000 to $250,000. And you keep getting smaller. The shot glass that might need $1 million or $3 million, still within the realm of what we could possibly cobble together, but certainly below what the typical investment community would give. And then we had a thimble full of stuff that took $3 to $5 million. Like when I started this, we still had relationships in the investment community that would dip down and meet us. Frankly, a lot of the, even angel investor, but certainly the venture investor has disintermediated themselves. They no longer listen to that. And then when you talk about some of the other investment vehicles, they simply have never written a check that's that small. But still, this is where innovation starts, and if you're never going to see it if it doesn't get to that place. This all too familiar graph is thrown around all the time. And I like the fact that kind of up that Sisyphean rock roll of the second side of the Valley of Death, everybody calls that early stage. When I have investors come and see me, I want to see the Chief Innovation Officer of Cleveland Clinic because we're interested in early stage investment. After about 5 minutes in telling them what we really do, they're squirming a little bit uncomfortably. Listen, man, early stage investment starts when I get the napkin, okay? That is what we have to preserve. We have to find ways to still gestate those very nascent ideas, or we're not going to have anything that emerges. So when we're talking about scale, you can multiply 0 by anything you want. You ain't going to scale it unless it gets to a certain point. The lamentation is always the same. What you deal with is too early and too risky. Well, I honestly can't change early. That is the environ of the academic innovator, the organic innovator. But we are working very, very hard to bridge this capital gap, and that is by adjusting the risk component of this. We're trying to work at this narrow hinge where the not-for-profit world blends into the for-profit world, and we're asking organizations, individuals, family offices, industry, everybody in the ecosystem, let's look at this holistically, not just through your narrow myopia that says, our investment thesis does this. And frankly, I shan't forget the philanthropist or even the venture philanthropist, a new group that is coming to us that I think shows great promise. One of the ways we're changing the risk is by scaling, hence the term. What we did, and you heard a little bit of a different take on this from our colleagues from the Netherlands and the UK, but 5 years ago, we started to aggregate some of the largest academic medical centers and research universities in the country under the banner of the Global Healthcare Innovation Alliance. This group works off a best practice, best process model. We help each other. We all know that innovation happens best at the intersection of knowledge domains. I have locks on my campus at the Cleveland Clinic. There might be a key at MedStar, the Mid-Atlantic's largest healthcare provider, or North Shore, Long Island, Jewish, with the New York's largest healthcare provider. We've found this to be an extremely effective way to not only have synergistic innovation, but also have the opportunistic innovation, and better yet, strategic innovation. Great minds thinking around defined problems. I'm from a state that's very progressive in understanding the impact of innovation on a former industrial titan, which is now a knowledge-based economy. Ohio is second only to California in cities of over 100,000 population. That's why we're important in the Electoral College. So we actually have a very unique geography, which means I can have breakfast in Cleveland, lunch in Columbus, and dinner in Cincinnati. We have a geographic proximity, and frankly, we kind of all speak the same language. Not like Philly and Pittsburgh, two cities in which I lived, maybe not like San Francisco and LA, but I call that propinquity. When you can put geographic proximity and cultural alignment together, you can actually start working together and collaborating in ways that make Ohio maybe one of the best laboratories we have for breakthrough innovation. We also have what we call entrepreneurial signature programs, taking it further. We may have great discovery science, medicinal chemistry, great insight in medical device and healthcare IT, but we also have to bring in the expertise, the talent, and frankly, the dollars. It's tough in the middle of the country. And so these are all the things that we're doing to advance it. The governor and the Board of Regents just sent me on a little task. I performed an interrogatory that brought together all the major institutions. We found fascinating things, but here's what we did find. Huge amount of collaboration and a culture that wants to promote innovation, not only respectively, but mutually. I'm a finger doctor, okay? So it's at one point, my understanding of economics kind of fizzles out. The good news is I get to meet great people at conferences like this or through my role at the Cleveland Clinic. And one of them is Andrew Lowe at the MIT Sloan School. You may know him as literally writing a book about hedge funds. Frankly, you may want to look for his name to pop up in Stockholm someday. He's a rock star economist talking about mega funding for cancer. But fortunately, we met on the concept of maybe securitizing. Because if we are now aggregating some of the largest pools of intellectual property from the academy, we need vehicles that are more appealing to the investment community. And fortunately, you know, if I was being asked physics questions, I'd hope to have Einstein sitting next to me. When I'm being asked about sophisticated financial engineering and how it might be able to turn the corner and help us sustain innovation in the academy, we have Andrew Lo. Look him up, that would be worthwhile. The only net new job creator in our country the last 2 decades are companies less than 5 years old. Where do they come from? Well, if you believe the Kauffman Foundation and others, anywhere from 1/3 to as many 60% come from healthcare and related healthcare IT. That's what makes this important. When can an idea written on a napkin all of a sudden translate into jobs and community economic development? That's what motivates us. Number one, helping our fellow man. I already talked about that mission, but I don't want to forget there's other things. If you're a hospital, if you're a research university, if you're a major corporation, if you're a fledgling corporation, I know you care about your community and you want to provide for it. There are few things as patriotic as looking to advance innovation. It is the job engine. What all this really means to me is we talk about clusters a lot, that interdependent type of activity between the type of entities. I like the constellation concept because I think you can have capabilities that are geographically distributed, domain distributed. Frankly, all the stakeholders from individuals, the individual innovators, the institutions that they represent, industry, investment community, elected officials. We want to actually connect all this. And I believe right now we are at an inflection point. We know that healthcare is at an historic time of change. And I believe that the margin of difference that is going to deliver success to any one of those individual stakeholders is probably going to be attenuated if we're finding a way to put them all together and make important the collaboration component diminish the competition component. As you may or may not know, I'm the only Ohio-born officer of the Cleveland Clinic. You know, I'm the semi-adroit Appalachian they trot out to talk to the neighborhoods and things like that, right? But I do have a bigger mission, and that is to build a middle coast of innovation. I give great accolades to Silicon Valley and to Cambridge, but you know something? We came through an era when Cleveland was the 4th largest city in the 1920 census. We're now 45th. We have to find ways to resurrect that maker economy and that idea of how we participate in the new way that work is being done between your ears. And frankly, I'm a huge patriot. I got a chance to take a bunch of the soldiers out to breakfast here yesterday. It was a real thrill for me, and we all should think about the heroes that defend our freedom, especially here in a military town. But I don't think there's anything more innovative than more patriotic than participating in innovation. So we can talk about innovation at scale. I'm just talking about kind of where it starts. It starts with an individual idea that associates it with its institution, that allows institutions to come together and then grow from there. Regions, nations. I don't think there's any concentric circle that is too large to promote and to cement through innovation. I really thank you for this opportunity. And again, thank Daniel Kraft. On time, how about that?